And so came to an end the courier's exploits in the frontier. A decade of hatred, a 1,000-mile march, a rise to power. For Tasha Weaver, once paladin of the Brotherhood, now paladin of God. It all culminated in the frozen lands of the frontier. As the Legion's flame extinguished, the fires of hope alit, the Crusaders and the NCR met again at the Biennial Oak to sign the Frontier Concordat. With the stroke of a pen, the bitter war that began at Helios I ended. An era of restoration had begun. Instruments of war became instruments of progress. Power armor aided in construction. PDWs welded pipes and steel. Lasers and flamers decimated centuries of ice as the Allies restored the roads. Vertibirds flew cement, scrap, and manpower wherever it was needed. The new Allies also refurbished the old Clinton Kelly Hospital. Staffed with chauffeurs and NCR medics, it began once again serving the community. The frontier, a once desolate, war-torn land, became a beacon in an age of darkness. Because war never changes, but people can. The damning cold seemed more bitter as a solemn goodbye was given to the fallen, NCR and Crusader alike. Weaver's eulogy, despite its candor and love, could not salve the pain of her kin. Tears fell with the sting of sleet as they laid Clements to rest. Beloved friend, a hero, the patriarch of their family. They would recover, but not today. It's not often love triumphs in the frozen, war-torn wastes. But for Charlene and Elian, well, they found each other again. Forsyth's terroristic plans were thwarted by the courier. But would giving mercy to such a man backfire? Would he recover and return? Perhaps he died in the abysmal cold. Perhaps he started again elsewhere. Men like Forsyth seldom turned from their evil. With Valerius dead and Ostia destroyed, the Northern Legion quickly disbanded. Most simply integrated into the native Scav population, or used their fighting skill to form raider gangs. A choice few returned to the Legion fort, where Caesar had them put to the cross for their failure. As the war subsided, Junk Flea began to prosper. No longer relying on selling information on factions, they were able to begin more legal operations. Utilizing Junk Flea's water reservoirs and ample space, large swaths of the underground were turned into hydroponic areas. Though the courier would never meet the mayor would eventually become a very powerful figure, albeit from the shadows. As the threat of the war passed, the mayor could no longer tolerate the slums' lawlessness. The guards moved through the slums like fire, arresting or executing the worst of the criminals. The slums would still be considered dangerous, but they would never again be as toxic as they once were. Thomas was not what the Church of Eternal Life expected for a guardian, but in the end, they had few complaints. Thomas would never err in his duties, and would eventually be granted sainthood by the Church. The Church, blissfully ignorant of truth, would continue to operate as they had before, spreading the message of Ghoul Jesus to all who would listen. Their beliefs would eventually extend beyond the frontier, with new chapters being established in the NCR and even in the Midwest. Irvington continued to prosper, even as more and more people began to grow sick. After years of suffering and dozens dead, Dr. Pavus finally created a cure for the disease. With the plague ended, Irvington would grow to rival Junkfleet in size and influence, becoming a beacon of civilization in Portland. With the salt mine gone, thanks to the Courier, Salt Town quickly died off. Worries that a salt shortage would ensue disappeared as new veins and mines were discovered. These mines were run by those who had suffered in Salt Town, and so the workers were treated with respect and dignity. The frontier became known as a haven for miners, with even workers from Quarry Junction making the journey up north. With the war over, a detachment of Crusaders was sent to investigate rumors of chem-addicted mutants. They came back telling tales of demonic serpents that had opened a door into the underworld. Queen Juno knew it was only a matter of time until a rogue group of Crusaders destroyed them, and so officially converted the Trikali into Mormons. The Crusaders would use the Trikali as an example that anything could embrace the light, while keeping their rampant chem use a secret. After years of scams, Smokes finally messed with the wrong customer. The Courier dished out some wasteland justice upon him and his cohorts. As he died on the floor of the Green Ferry, so too did the secret to the best absinthe in the frontier. Inspired by the Courier, the last Pathfinder slowly rebuilt the Bleeders. With Dr. Hurt's aid, he brought orphans and lost souls to the sanctuary, passing down his ways and knowledge to them. Years later, the last Pathfinder would pass on peacefully, surrounded by the children he had raised to become the next generation of Bleeders. By then, he had taken on a new role, and thus was given a new name: Ribbon, Teacher, and Father. The Courier saved Violet Osborne from the hell of slavery. While she dreamt of returning to Shady Sands, life as a waitress gave her perspective. Labor improvements and pay increases would be her first order of business when she returned to Osborne Metallurgy. Thanks to the Courier, Sanctuary was able to continue operating as a haven for sentient robots. Though Quentin would never admit it, his dealings with the Courier had given him a new perspective on human-robot relations. Murder was no longer the first resort, and Sanctuary became open to outside trade. The secrets of the past were buried away as Sanctuary embraced a bright new future. Inspired by the Courier, Theo made good on his promise to form a new enclave. Recruiting a mixture of fresh blood and remnants, Theo formed a new group based out of the ruins of the space station that fell to Earth. This new enclave would be a relief group, helping those in need, similar to the followers. The only difference was that they didn't serve ghouls. Though Joseph was sad to see his former friends fail, he knew the Courier made the right decision in granting the Scavs independence. However, with this independence came the revival of the slave trade. Undeterred, the Hanged Man redoubled his efforts. So long as he lived, no man or woman would be in chains. While the Crusaders struck Jolene as worrisome at first, she came to recognize their desire to help the denizens of the frontier. They kept the peace, and Jolene kept her distance. With the Courier's parting, Jolene felt she deserved a break from the soldier's life. Ditching her combat gear in favor of a party dress, Jolene headed back to the Wasted Angel to get her fill of cocktails and Charlie's pre-war tales. By spending time with the Courier, America was able to conquer the abandonment issues tormenting her. With her self-doubt gone, she refocused. She found her place in the world, for now it would be with the Crusaders. But like all young adults, the need to test the waters of life beckoned. Perhaps one day, she and the courier will meet again. When the NCR won, Lot was one of the first to give himself over to the NCR, perhaps as a way of reconciliation for what he had done. To his surprise, word of his travels with the courier allowed him to join the ranks of the NCR, cleaning out the slaver dens he once inhabited. After the courier left the frontier, life continued as usual for Wrench and Bolt. Though her future jobs were safer and more financially rewarding, she would look back warmly on your adventures together. And so it came to an end, the courier's magnum opus, a final adventure to the unknown. The road to Hoover Dam now lay before the courier, an empty slate to be carved. Because war never changes.